Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months. My mother's voice crackled through the hospital room speakers sharp enough to pierce the heavy air. I clutched the phone tighter, my hand trembling against the stiff blanket pulled over my legs. It was Christmas Eve, and while most families gathered around glowing trees and laughter, I sat in a sterile room at the Las Vegas Medical Center, waiting for emergency surgery. My name is Natasha Wilson. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. Tonight was no different. Across the room, my 2-year-old twins Ethan and Emily played with a toy truck and a stuffed giraffe, blissfully unaware that their mother might not survive the night. A kind nurse named Valerie was checking my vitals, her touch steady, her eyes full of the compassion my own parents had never managed to give. The pain in my abdomen throbbed like a knife twisting deeper with every breath. Internal bleeding, the doctor said. Surgery couldn't wait. Yet the greater ache came from the indifference on my mother's face as she spoke from her comfortable living room, preparing to head out for her concert and Christmas Eve with my younger sister Jessica, the golden child who could do no wrong. When I asked my parents if they could watch their only grandchildren while I underwent surgery, my father's voice cut through cold and sharp. You're becoming a real nuisance, Natasha, a burden. We're retired now, we deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems. Burden. The word hit harder than the diagnosis. I'd been supporting them financially for 3 years, sending $500 each month to cover their mortgage and expenses since they retired early. Even after James, my husband, was killed in a car accident 6 months ago, I continued the payments, believing families should support one another. And here they were dismissing me as if I were nothing more than a weight around their necks. Tears stung my eyes, sliding silently down my cheeks. Valerie placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. My friend Olivia is a nanny, she whispered. She's worked with children who've gone through trauma. Let me call her for you. Her kindness broke something in me. My parents had rejected me, but here was a stranger offering to protect the 2 most precious lives in my world. Yes, I managed, voice shaking. Please call her. As the phone call ended, a flood of memories washed over me. Jessica's triumphs had always overshadowed my own. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely noticed because Jessica was cast in a local commercial. At my wedding, they complained about the venue being too far from their house. When the twins were born, they visited once, claiming babies were too fussy. James had always been my anchor through the storm of their neglect. We'll build our own family, he used to say, kissing my forehead. One that knows how to love. And we did, until a drunk driver stole him from me, leaving me to navigate motherhood and grief alone. Despite everything, I kept sending money to my parents. I told myself it was duty, that maybe my love would one day be enough for them to love me back. How foolish I was. Now, lying in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms and fear clawing at my chest, they had proven once and for all that I was nothing but an afterthought. When Olivia arrived an hour later, she was exactly as Valerie had described, gentle, professional, and immediately connecting with Ethan and Emily. My children climbed into her lap without hesitation, something they rarely did with anyone new. Relief poured through me, mingling with the fog of pain medication. Could you bring me my phone? I asked Valerie. My hands shaking, she placed it in my palm and I typed 2 messages. The first went to my bank: cancel all automatic transfers to my parents' account. The second went to my parents: I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Do not contact me again. As the orderlies wheeled me toward the operating room, something surprising coursed through me, cutting through the fear. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I was severing the ties that had bound me in pain for decades. When I woke after surgery, the world was a haze of fluorescent light and the steady beep of monitors. My body felt hollowed out, stitched together with both thread and exhaustion. But I was alive. The first sound I registered wasn't the nurses, but the soft giggles of Ethan and Emily. They sat cross-legged on the floor of my hospital room, Olivia beside them, building towers out of wooden blocks. Relief hit me so hard it brought fresh tears to my eyes. My babies were safe. Valerie noticed my tears and leaned down. The surgery was successful. You'll need weeks of recovery, but you're going to be okay. Those words, "you're going to be okay," were something I had never heard from my parents, not once in my life. Hours later, my phone buzzed on the side table. Dozens of missed calls. My mother, my father, Jessica. Their texts lit up the screen like fireworks. "How dare you cut us off right before Christmas? You owe us after everything we've done for you. Don't be dramatic, Natasha, we just needed one night to ourselves. Call us back immediately." Not one message asked if I had survived surgery. Not one message mentioned Ethan or Emily. It was all about them, their entitlement, their outrage. I put the phone face down and closed my eyes. My chest ached, not just from the stitches, but from the finality of it all. I had drawn a line and they would never forgive me for it. The days that followed blurred together. Olivia stayed with the twins when Valerie was on shift. They decorated paper snowflakes to tape on the hospital window, their tiny voices singing jingle bells in off-key harmony. For the first time, my children were experiencing genuine care that didn't come with strings attached. On the third day, Jessica stormed into my room. Her designer coat was still dusted with snow, her hair perfectly curled. She didn't even glance at Ethan and Emily before hissing at me. "Mom and Dad are devastated," she snapped. "They had to cancel their vacation to Mexico because of what you did. Do you have any idea how selfish that was?" Something inside me hardened. I had spent my whole life crumbling under her scorn, but lying there stitched and weak, I found my voice. Selfish. My voice cracked but grew stronger with each word. "I almost died, Jessica. I begged them to help me keep my kids safe while I went into surgery. And they chose a concert. They called me a burden. And you're standing here telling me I'm selfish." Jessica faltered, her lips parting, but no defense came out. She wasn't used to me pushing back. I pointed to the door. "Leave. Unless you came to ask about your niece and nephew, you have no place here." Her cheeks flushed red, but she spun on her heel and left without another word. Ethan clapped his hands and said, "Goodbye, mean lady," sending Olivia and Valerie into quiet laughter. That night I lay awake replaying Jessica's face. It wasn't shock that I remembered most, but fear. Fear that the money flow was gone, that the comfortable life they'd grown accustomed to was crumbling. For years I had been the lifeline none of them admitted I was. Now without me, they were drowning. And I realized something else: they weren't angry because they lost me. They were angry because they lost control over me. On Christmas morning, Valerie wheeled in a small artificial tree decorated with paper ornaments Ethan and Emily had made. We sang carols in the hospital room, Olivia snapping photos of the twins grinning with frosting on their cheeks from the cookies a nurse had smuggled in. It wasn't the Christmas I'd dreamed of, but it was ours. And it was free of the poison that had haunted every holiday before it. By New Year's, I was strong enough to walk the hallways, my children holding each of my hands. With each step, I felt lighter, as if I were walking away from decades of neglect and into a new future I hadn't yet fully imagined. By February, I was finally discharged, a little weaker, a little thinner, but alive. Olivia helped me pack up the hospital room, while Ethan and Emily toddled around picking up crayons and toys as if they were helping too. When I stepped out into the crisp winter air, it felt like I was walking into a brand new life. My parents didn't show up that day. They hadn't visited once during my recovery, not a single call to check on the twins. But they had sent me more messages. Angry, pleading, manipulative. "We need the mortgage payment. You can't just cut us off like this. We sacrificed for you all your life. You owe us. Your children will hate you when they find out how you treated their grandparents." I stopped reading after that. I had wasted too many years letting their words cut me down. Now I needed my strength for Ethan and Emily. Olivia moved into the spare bedroom for a while, helping with the twins and refusing to take much pay. "Think of me as family," she said with a smile, and my throat tightened. Family, something I thought I'd lost, was right here in the kindness of people who chose to stay. By spring, I was working part-time again, easing back into my role at the design firm where I'd been before surgery. My boss was patient, giving me flexibility so I could heal and take care of the twins. For the first time, I felt valued not just as an employee, but as a person. One afternoon in March, I came home to find an envelope taped to my front door. My father's handwriting. My stomach clenched as I opened it. Inside was a single page. "We're losing the house. If you don't restart the transfers, we'll be homeless. Do you want that on your conscience? There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done. Just blame, just manipulation. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the letter while Ethan and Emily played in the living room, their laughter a stark reminder of what mattered most. I thought about the 3 years I had sent them money, over $90,000 in total. I thought about how they had used it to retire early, to fund vacations, to spoil Jessica while calling me a burden. I thought about lying in that hospital bed begging them to help, and hearing them choose a concert instead. The guilt that letter tried to stir in me didn't take root. Instead, something colder settled, clarity. That weekend, Jessica showed up unannounced. She looked more frazzled than usual, her hair messy, her designer purse hanging limply off her shoulder. "Mom and Dad are desperate," she said the moment I opened the door. "You can't just abandon them. They're family." I let her words hang there, then answered quietly. "Family doesn't call you a burden when you're dying. Family doesn't leave your children alone on Christmas Eve." She flinched but pressed on. "They made mistakes, but you're their daughter. Don't you feel anything for them?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I feel free." Her eyes widened as though she didn't recognize me anymore. Then she muttered something under her breath and stormed off, slamming the door behind her. That night, as I tucked Ethan and Emily into bed, Ethan whispered, "Mommy, are we safe now?" Tears filled my eyes. I kissed his forehead. "Yes, baby, we're safe now." Because we were. Safe from their manipulation, safe from their neglect. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what would happen without them. I had built something stronger on my own. Still, I knew they wouldn't give up. My parents had fed on my compliance for too long to walk away quietly. Something told me the final confrontation was still ahead, and when it came, I would need every ounce of strength I had left. It happened on a rainy afternoon in April. I was folding laundry while the twins napped, when a sharp knock rattled the door. My heart sank before I even looked through the peephole. My parents stood there, drenched from the storm, my mother's lips pursed tight, my father's jaw clenched. I opened the door but did not step aside. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "We need to talk," my father said. His voice was no longer commanding but strained, almost pleading. "We're losing everything. The bank is taking the house. Jessica can't help us. You're our only chance." My mother chimed in, her eyes flashing. "We gave you life, Natasha. We raised you. Now you repay us by abandoning us." Her words reignited every wound I had tried to heal. I thought of the surgeries, the funerals, the birthdays where they never showed up. I thought of Ethan and Emily playing quietly in the hospital while my parents chose a concert. I thought of James, of how he had warned me once. "You can't bleed for people who never even offer you a bandage." "I bled for you for years," I said, my voice trembling but strong. "I paid your bills. I kept you in that house. I gave until I had nothing left. And when I needed you, when your grandchildren needed you, you called me a burden." My father's face darkened, but my mother tried another tactic. "We were scared, Natasha. We didn't know what to do." That night, "Stop," I cut her off. "You weren't scared. You were selfish. You chose Elton John over your daughter's life. You chose convenience over love. And now you're here because the gravy train stopped." They exchanged a glance, and for the first time I saw fear there. Real fear. Not for me, not for Ethan or Emily. Fear for themselves. "Please," my father said softer now. "We'll lose everything." I shook my head. "No, you already lost me." My mother's mouth opened, but I closed the door before she could speak again. Their muffled voices carried through the wood for a minute before fading away, swallowed by the rain. When I turned back, Ethan and Emily were standing in the hallway rubbing their eyes. "Who was it, Mommy?" Emily asked sleepily. "Just the past," I said, kneeling down to hug them. "And the past doesn't live here anymore." That night I sat on the couch with Olivia and Valerie, who had both become anchors in my life. We watched the twins draw pictures with crayons, giggling and trading colors. I felt a strange ache in my chest, not from grief this time, but from gratitude. I no longer had parents in the traditional sense, but I had something better, a chosen family. People who showed up, who didn't see me as a burden, who saw my children as blessings rather than inconveniences. Weeks later I heard through Jessica that my parents did in fact lose the house. They moved into a small apartment, bitter and resentful. Jessica begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't celebrating their downfall. I simply accepted that their choices had led them there. As summer arrived, I took Ethan and Emily to the park nearly every day. We'd sit under the shade of the old oak tree sharing peanut butter sandwiches, their laughter carrying across the playground. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking at the sky, whispering to James, "We're okay." I kept my promise. I built our family, because that's what this journey had taught me. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love, by sacrifice, by showing up when it matters. And sometimes the most powerful act of self-love is learning to shut the door on those who only open theirs when they need you. To those of you listening now, I want you to remember this. You are not a burden. You are not unworthy of love. If the people you call family make you feel like you are, then you have every right to build a new family, one that lifts you up instead of tearing you down. If my story resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need strength today, and subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from people you once called family? What did you learn when you did? I'd love to hear your story.